By default, your PC settings suck. And if you've never optimized for performance, you're missing out on more FPS, smooth gameplay and optimal response times. And at the highest elos, every second counts. So if you have any input lag, it's going to be holding you back. With these settings, I get over 300 FPS constant, my game feels absolutely crisp, and input lag is non-existent. So today, I'll go through every optimization you need for maximum performance, and they're all important, so make sure you don't skip any steps. There's 3 main sections that we're going to fully optimize. All of the Windows optimizations that you need, specific Valorant tweaks, and optimal Nvidia 3D settings. But first, let me tell you about the Immortal Roadmap program. It's possibly one of the best coaching services out there right now. They offer one-on-one coaching, which includes personalized drills, detailed player assessments, 10-man scrims, and even live sessions. They have tons of radiant coaches like Kompeki, and players with VCT experience at the pro level like Screwface and Gangster. I used to be a coach for IRP, and one of the best features was how tight-knit the community is. They've helped hundreds of players hit Immortal and Radiant, and in fact, they're so confident in their service that they're offering a 5 rank up guarantee over the 8-week program. So check out the link in the description or the pinned comment if you want to fly up the ranks to your dream rank today. First thing you need to do is create a system restore point. So to do that, open up the start menu, type in create a restore point, click it, and under system protection, click create a restore point, name it whatever you like, and then click create. That way, if you mess up anything during this process, you can always safely go back to your restore point. Now, the next one's a little tweak that I'd recommend for low-end PCs, and that one's click in advanced. Under performance, you click settings and go to adjust for best performance. And then you're going to want to turn on these boxes here. So smooth scroll list boxes, smooth edges of screen fonts, show thumbnails instead of icons, enable peak. Then click apply. Next, after you've created the system restore point to make sure you can't mess anything up, you want to be unparking your cores, and I'd recommend this for everybody. So I'm going to link this guide in the description, but you want to scroll down and select CPU unparking tool. And once you open it up and download it, it's going to look something like this. Now, all you do is click check status, let it work its magic. When it's finished, it should pop up something like this. Now, because I've already done it, it says unparked. Yours probably will say parked if you've never done this, and all you do is select unpark all and it'll go through a process again and it should reevaluate and say unparked. You'll need to reboot your computer and then you can just run this program again, check status again, and the cores should be unparked. What this does is it prevents Windows from controlling any part of your CPU. So when your cores are able to be parked, Windows can actually turn some of your CPU cores off to save power. Now, obviously, if we're playing games and one of your 6 or one of your 8 cores are turned off in your CPU, you're not going to be getting maximum performance from your CPU. The downside of unparking all the cores is that your CPU is going to run at 100% power at all times. Obviously, you will use a little bit more power, and that's going to increase FPS and system responsiveness. So next up, select start and type in system. Click on display. On display, you can scroll all the way down and select graphics settings and make sure you have hardware accelerated GPU scheduling on. What that's going to do is it's going to reduce your latency and increase your performance. Next, make sure on notifications and actions that your notifications from apps and other senders is off. Mine's already off by default. And on focus assist, I also make sure all the notifications are turned off there as well. Next up is power and sleep, and this one's super important. Select power and sleep, make sure you select additional power settings, and you're going to come to this page here. By default, you're probably on a balanced power plan. Now, you might not have ultimate performance plan, but it doesn't really matter. You just want to select whichever one you can see, which is based on performance. And once you've done that, select change plan settings, change advanced power settings, and make sure your plan is selected here. So for me, ultimate performance is selected, and there's only 2 real settings that you need to change. The first one is PCI Express, link state power management. You want to make sure that setting is off. It should be off if you've selected your performance plan, but double check. Again, what this does is quite similar to parking your CPU cores. Windows can actually select like pieces of hardware to put into power saving mode. Again, if you're playing games and all of a sudden it puts your SSD or your hard drive into power saving mode, it's going to create stutters to sort of wake it up again. So make sure that setting's off. Next one is your processor power management. Now, you want to make sure that obviously your system cooling is active. It should be by default, but double check your minimum processor state and your maximum processor state is at 100%, because again, people will say that you don't need this at 100%, but if all of a sudden in game, the game is deciding some of your processor, let's put it down to 60%, we don't need to use it, and then loads of smokes happen, flashes happen, and it tries to juice it up to 100%, it's going to create some stutters. So minimum and maximum on 100% and apply that. That's it for power and sleep mode. For storage, I'm not going to bore you with it, but double check that the SSD or hard drive that you run Valorant on is not cluttered with too much useless stuff. Obviously, you can remove temporary files in here. But yeah, just make sure the hard drive got adequate amount of space on it. Otherwise, it can increase stutters, decrease your FPS. After that, type in gaming and select game mode settings. We can make sure that game mode is switched on by default. It's going to optimize your PC for gameplay, and it's going to reduce input lag, increase FPS, and all that good stuff. Another setting you need to absolutely turn off is Xbox Game Bar. When you have this setting on, Microsoft runs Xbox Game Bar in the background. It can do stuff like randomly start recording your sounds, record gameplay, and if you do use it for that, you definitely shouldn't. The next up, what you're going to want to do is type in background apps, select that, and make sure let apps run in the background is turned off. You don't want any pointless apps that you're not using, like a calculator running in the background. That brings me to another point. If you have software that you're not using, just randomly open when you're playing Valorant, that could be Google Chrome, any random Zoom or anything like that. Anything at all that you don't need while playing Valorant, you should absolutely close it. Next up, Nvidia 3D settings. So open up your Nvidia control panel. You can either right click here or type in Nvidia, select control panel, and once it's open, we're going to go to adjust image settings with preview at the top left. By default, it's going to be on let the 3D application decide. What you want to do first is select the third drop down, which is use my preference emphasizing. Now, again, by default, that's going to be on quality. I want you to select it all the way to the left on performance, click apply. Once that's applied, click yes, and select the second option, use the advanced 3D image setting. Click apply again, and then we can go to manage the 3D settings. Now, what we just did is actually optimized most of these settings, but ones you absolutely need to select are your graphics card on OpenGL rendering GPU. You want to select power management mode on prefer maximum performance, preferred refresh rate on highest available, texture filtering quality on high performance, vertical sync on off, virtual reality pre-rendered frames on 1. Everything else doesn't really make much of a difference, but I'll slowly scroll through some of my settings just in case you want to copy them. Next up, click on change resolution, and this one's kind of funny. A lot of people by default have it on a resolution under Ultra HD, HD or SD. And as you can see, when I select 1920 by 1080, my refresh rate is capped at 60 Hz. Now, hopefully this isn't you, but if you have a monitor on 144 Hz or 240 Hz, you absolutely need to select your native res under PC. And then we can see we're actually allowed to use our refresh rate. So hopefully that's not you, but if it is, make sure it's selected under PC. Now you can actually use your monitor's refresh rate. And if for any reason you still can't run it on your monitor's refresh rate, so for me 240, let's imagine it just says 60, you have an issue with a cable. So there's some cables like old HDMI cables that don't actually allow you to run at above 60 Hz. The newer HDMI 2.0 I think actually do, but yeah, anyways, make sure that your cable is actually the right one. So I'd recommend DisplayPort. Next up, color settings. This is all personal preference, but for Valorant I'd actually recommend around 80% digital vibrance or maybe even 70%. I do think 100% is pretty troll, but some people like it. Adjust desktop size and position. From all of the research I've done and seen over the years, I've seen people say perform scaling on display is the best for input lag, so I definitely recommend on that. I unselect override the scaling mode set by games and programs, and I select the scaling mode on aspect ratio, these are just the default settings, and that's pretty much it for your Nvidia settings. For your Valorant settings, I'm only going to talk about the ones that will affect your input lag and FPS. The absolute biggest one is the display mode, and so many players are rocking windowed full screen and saying, I just want to alt tab faster. Well, if you want to alt tab faster and have more input lag, feel free to use it. For the rest of us who want as little input lag as possible, you absolutely need to be selecting full screen mode. I recommend your native res, but stretched is fine. For Nvidia low reflex latency, you definitely want that on or on plus boost, and that's going to depend on what graphics card you have. So if you have a 2070 Super or above, or a 30 series for example, or a 40 series, you want on plus boost. For everything below a 2070 Super, you want the selection on. I have a 30 series, so I use on plus boost. Okay, for graphics quality, you want multi-threaded rendering on. Everything else I choose on low or off, apart from anti-aliasing and filtering. Now, this is personal preference. It doesn't do too much for FPS. I'd recommend trying the different settings on this in the range and choosing what works for you. Everything else should be off, and bloom is optional. I personally prefer bloom off, but see what works for you. That's pretty much it for in-game Valorant settings. Okay, what we're going to do next is find valorant.exe in your computer. So just go to start menu, type in Valorant, and you can select open file location here. So once you've done that, right click Valorant, select properties and go to compatibility. You want to make sure that disable full screen optimizations is selected, and you also want to select run this program as an administrator. What disabling your full screen optimizations is going to do is ensure that the application runs in what's called full screen exclusive mode, and that's the best mode for maximum FPS and lower input latency. So definitely select these on and then click OK. If you're looking for the best settings that pros use in game, such as optimal keybinds or the best controls to toggle on and off, go check out the video in the top left now.